Hi everyone, welcome to Module 2, which covers interventions in holistic integrated healthcare and the mind-body connection. In this module, we really start exploring from a holistic viewpoint why people get sick and what they can do to have more control over staying well. These are foundational questions that you'll be asked to ponder in this class. I'm certainly not asking you to agree with everything that is presented in this class. I am, however, asking you to have an open mind and critically think about what is being presented and come to your own conclusion for yourself what your answers are. Many of the discussion questions don't have a right or wrong answer, but I will ask you to fully explain why you arrived at your answer. So why do we get sick? A conventional Western view has been that something is causing an illness. So bacteria is causing an infection, or a virus is causing a flu, or cancer cells are growing and multiplying out of control until they take over good cells to the point of the good cells not being able to function correctly. And that to stay well, we have to kill the germs, kill the virus, or remove the cancer cells with surgery or kill them with chemotherapy or radiation. However, what if the bacteria, the virus, or the cancer cells were not the whole problem? What if they are not the primary reason we get sick? Have you noticed that during flu season, everyone in the school or the workplace or the home can be exposed to the same germs, but only some of them get sick? Why is that? Perhaps part of the answer lies in boosting the immune system. In other words, perhaps part of the answer about staying well lies in the balance found in the terrain of the body. Is it possible that whether or not we get sick is not dependent only on germs, but also dependent on whether the body has a terrain of fertile ground in which illness can grow? Let's use hydrangeas as a tool to understand this. Hydrangeas can be blue, pink, or purple. The exact same plant will be one of those three colors depending on the soil in which it's planted. For blue flowers, the hydrangeas need to grow in acidic soil with a pH of 5.5 or lower. For pink flowers, the plants need neutral to alkaline soils with a pH of 6.5 and higher. For purple flowers, or a mix of blue and pink flowers in the same plant, the pH of the soil must be between 5.5 and 6.5. So the terrain is more important than the seed in order to determine the outcome of the growth. So chapter 5 is about the immune system. Have you heard of Louis Pasteur? He's commonly known as the father of microbiology. His work supported the germ theory of disease. The germ theory states that diseases are caused by microorganisms. These small organisms, too small to see without magnification, can invade our bodies, and they grow and reproduce within our bodies, and we can end up with illness. So in other words, the determining factor of whether we get sick is the germs, regardless of the terrain of the body the germs invade. Most of Western medicine has been based on this theory. In contrast, another scientist, Claude Bernard, was certain that the terrain of the body was more important than the germ. In other words, it is not the presence of the germ that can make a person sick, it is whether the terrain of the body allows the germ to grow into illness. Most of Eastern medicine is built on this premise. On page 83, however, which is the first page of chapter 5, you will find this quote from Louis Pasteur. As I mentioned, for most of his career, he supported the germ theory, but supposedly on his deathbed, he said, "Bernard was right, the germ is nothing, the terrain is everything." So the meaning behind this quote is extremely important to everything else we will be covering in this class. And like I said earlier, I'm really not asking you to agree with everything that is presented in this class, but I am asking you to have an open mind and to critically think about what's being presented and come to your own conclusions for yourself what your answers are. Pierre-Jacques-Antoine Béchamp was a French scientist engaged in a bitter rivalry with Louis Pasteur. So please watch this 4-minute video, you can find the link in D2L, which describes the differences between the theories of the two scientists. Pause the YouTube video at around 3 minutes and 35 seconds to look closely at the comparison chart between the two scientists' theories. Remember that during most of his career, Louis Pasteur supported the germ theory. Okay, so let's move on to an overview of Chapter 6, which focuses on stress. There are many definitions for stress. Your book uses this one: a perception that the demands of the environment exceed our coping skills. So it has 3 parts. Let's start with the 2 parts of demands of the environment, or we can call them stressors, and coping skills. Remember the old-fashioned weighing scales? In order for it to be balanced, the amount of weight on each side of it has to be equal. So let's assume that what we are trying to balance is on one side, which is the number of stressors you have: work, school, health, relationships, finances. And on the other side, you hope to have at least enough coping skills to balance out the stressors. But the third component is really the most powerful component, and that's the perception of the situation. Let's take having a flat tire as an example. The flat tire is the stressor. Having the skill to change the flat tire is the coping skill. But let's say we have 2 people side by side, both with a flat tire and both with the skill to change the flat tire. One might have the perception that this stinks, this should not have happened, life is so unfair, why do these things always happen to me? That person is going to experience a lot more stress than the person who has the perception that, it is what it is, it happens, so what's my next step? The perception of the environment is the key component that determines how much stress the person experiences. Living in today's culture can be stressful, especially when you're a student or when you're a patient with a chronic illness. Reducing stress can boost the immune system. So if we want to reduce stress, how do we do it? There are many answers which are covered in Chapter 6. In my opinion, the answers fall into 3 broad categories. Reduce the demands of the environment. For example, take fewer classes each semester. 2, increase coping skills, such as add exercise or meditation or time management to your daily routine. Or 3, change your perception of how you are thinking about your situation. It is worth learning how to ease our perception of stress. If we live in a continued state of stress, it can take a toll on the physical body. There are many stress reduction techniques mentioned in Chapter 6, such as exercise, progressive muscle relaxation, meditation, and imagery. Read Chapter 6 to learn more about stress and ways to reduce it, and read Chapter 25 to learn about mind-body therapies. So in summary, the purpose of this module is to build a foundational understanding from a holistic perspective of the interplay between the immune system, which we'll read about in Chapter 5, stress, which you will read about in Chapter 6, and mind-body therapies, which you'll read about in Chapter 25. Holistic health leans toward the terrain view. In order to promote wellness, it is important to boost the immune system so that the terrain of the body is balanced. It's important to manage stress so that uncontrolled stress does not compromise the terrain of the immune system, and that there are some mind-body therapies which help to reduce stress and boost the immune system, thus promoting wellness. So please read these chapters, then do the quiz and the assignment, and I hope you have a great week.